6. The door to Mitch's late-night cafe and bar opens, and the last two bar staff came out into the cold night air and walked briskly off together down the deserted street. Bill Fraker watched them from the grateful warmth of his BMW parked discreetly in the shadows on the other side of the roads as they turned the corner and disappeared from sight. This was the part that always gave Fraker butterflies. Every time, no matter how many times he had done it, those moments of calm, alone with his own thoughts, when his mind would wander unbeaten to any number of scenarios, hardly any of which leaned towards the positive, that could play out in the next 10 minutes or so. And it was usually around this time, stuck in a car at 3 in the morning, waiting for the impending violence, that Bill Fraker thought about getting fit again. After all, he was no spring chicken anymore. He would be 48 in 2 months, and the 36-inch waistband of his trousers was beginning to dig into his belly again. And he had vowed to himself once that he would never buy a pair of trousers over that size. So that meant one of two things: elastic waistbands or dropping some poundage. He leaned across to the passenger side and clicked open the glove compartments and reached inside. The first thing he felt was a hip flask, newly topped up an hour ago, and for a second Fraker thought about taking a swig, just to calm the nerves, but cursed to himself and pushed it aside. That bollocks was for amateurs. He would need a clear head, and only after they were safely back in the car, and away would he allow himself a drink, to toast the end of another successful night. Successful because he still had a pulse. After further groping, his fingers finally found the cold metal of the Beretta, and Fraker took the pistol out and rested it on his lap. Now all he had to do was wait for Charlie, who as usual had gone to take a piss at the most inopportune time. Fraker had unofficially taken on the role of Charlie Walker's mentor over the last 6 months due to the fact Charlie's dad had been diagnosed with cancer and had to retire. Just as Charles Walker Sr. had done for him 20-odd years ago, when he had first got sucked into this life of crime. Charlie was a good kid, really, but he was only 24 and was a little too much into this whole gangster lifestyle for Fraker's liking. Charlie had already been a part of things on a very low level before his dad's illness, working behind the bar at one of the clubs or chauffeuring people about for the boss, Mr. Lynn, all of which had been legal up to a point, but was still kept quiet about around Charlie's dad at the time until his cancer had taken him out of the business and into a hospital ward. So now that no one had to tiptoe around Walker Sr., Charlie had taken the next step up into the real world. It was a running joke that Charlie's dad didn't know anything about his son's involvement with the firm. Charles Walker Sr. had worked as a gangster all his adult life, but rightly so didn't want this kind of life for his 2 kids, Charlie and his sister Kate. And so genuinely thought that Charlie was an estate agent and would often brag about how well he was doing, even though everyone else knew Charlie was off driving some dodgy judge around or running errands for the boss. No one ever said anything out of respect for him. That, and of course the fact that Mr. Lane had made it very clear he would maim anyone who did personally. The joke had soared recently though, now that Charlie's dad was, although no one would openly admit it, dying. At last a familiar skinny frame appeared out of an alleyway up the street from where Fraker was parked and began ambling down towards him. Charlie was mouthing something to himself as he approached, and Fraker knew he was doing what he always did at this time, going over his lines, ready for the fun and games about to kick off. Fraker got out of the car and concealed the pistol under his jacket as Charlie finally reached him. "Take your time, Sparky. No rush," Fraker said sarcastically. Charlie shrugged. "Hey, when you've gotta go, you've gotta go." Fraker passed him the pistol, which Charlie put in the back of his trousers. "Very gangsta," Fraker snorted. "Huh? Are we on then?" Walker said vacantly, looking across at the cafe. "Only about 5 minutes ago. What was the holdup? Couldn't you find it?" Not waiting for a response, Fraker started purposely across the road and over to the cafe. Walker had to jog to keep up. Fraker could hear the kid whispering to himself over and over. "Look at this, Mitch. Look at this, Mitch." The older man exhaled despairingly as they reached the door and turned to him. "Christ, Charlie, that's my line." "Huh?" Charlie looked blankly at him for a moment. Then the mist seemed to clear. "Oh yeah." Jesus. Fraker gave him his best steely stare and backhanded him on the chest. "Charles, look at me. Focus. Are you set?" Charlie jumped up and down on the spot a couple of times, psyching himself up. "I'm set," he said firmly and let out a few short, sharp breaths. "Set," he added for emphasis. Not entirely convinced, Fraker turned and knocked hard on the cafe's door. There was silence for a moment. Then someone on the other side shouted, "We're closed!" Fraker didn't answer and hammered on the door again, this time more insistently. He could feel heartbeat increase at the sound of footsteps approaching from the other side, and resisted the urge to take his pulse by the vein in his neck, which was throbbing now. "Gotta get fit," he thought. "One of these days I'm just going to keel over." Bizarrely, the thought made him smile slightly, imagining Charlie's face as he just drops dead, leaving him to deal with the guy about to open the door all on his own. The sound of keys in the door and bolts being thrown back snapped Fraker out of it. As the door opened, he made a fist. There was no two ways about it. Charlie Walker was watching a master at work, and it never ceased to amaze him. He leaned casually against the bar and watched as Fraker calmly helped the bar's owner, Mitch, get unsteadily to his feet. The poor fellow was coughing and spluttering, still reeling from the almighty punch Fraker had just landed square on his nose seconds before, which had sent him sprawling to the floor, knocking tables and chairs all over the place in the process. Bill, no, wait!" Mitch pleaded nasally, half blinded by tears and shock. Fraker picked up one of the overturned chairs. "Shh, Mitch. Come on. Calm down. Here, give me your hand," Fraker said softly and helped Mitch to his feet. "That's better. Come on, take a seat." He guided the dazed bar owner over to the chair and set him down. Then he took a chair for himself, swiveled it around so it was backwards, and sat on it facing Mitch with his arms resting casually on the backrest. Charlie watched all this while desperately trying to keep a straight face. He'd seen it dozens of times, and it never got old. Fraker stared at Mitch silently for a moment, letting the chaos of their entrance settle somewhat. Then he frowned as if noticing Mitch's busted nose for the first time. "Here, Mitch, your nose is bleeding." Fraker pulled out his handkerchief and handed it to Mitch, who took it with a trembling hand. Classic, thought Charlie. Every time they did this, he would always take mental notes of the way Fraker moved and the soothing tone of his voice. Bill Fraker was a big, intimidating man. They could have easily gone in shouting and screaming, smashing the place to pieces. But Charlie knew Fraker had learned throughout the years that this was always the best approach, or at least the one he preferred. 1 minute he had smacked the guy in the face, the next he was all smiles and genuine concern. Poor Mitch, just like all the others who were on his end of the routine, didn't know if he was coming or going. "If they don't know if you're going to kiss or kill them," Fraker had once told him, "then they won't know how to react. So once you're on top of the situation, you stay on top, with minimal bloodshed and tears all around. Still stunned, Mitch pressed the handkerchief to his bleeding nose, which caused him to take a sharp intake of breath. Bill, Charlie, he stammered. I was going to call you lads, I swear. Fraker held up his hands in a defensive gesture. Hey, Mitch, come on. You don't have to explain yourself to us. We know you've been busy. Don't we, Charlie? Charlie nodded on cue. Hell yeah. The bar owner swung his head, glancing between Fraker and Charlie, sending beads of sweat flying off his forehead. Really, it's been bad lambing here the past couple of weeks, he said. Fraker nodded, listening intently to the man. I can imagine, Mitch. Like I said, we trust you. You're a general good egg, and you've always been straight with me. Which goes a long way in my book, believe me. Fraker paused as if fighting to find the right words. It's just the boss. You see, he gets his headaches, and they do tend to make the old git bad-tempered at times. Unreasonable, some might say, although not to his face. So we're just here to put his mind at rest. I mean, 20,000 pounds. That's a lot of money, Mitch. There was no edge to Fraker's voice at all. He just seemed to want to help him, not break any bones. Charlie could see Mitch pick up on this as a lifeline and grabbed onto it with both hands. Yeah, of course, he bubbled. I understand, really I do, and I appreciate how patient you all been. Believe me, now that the place is taken off, he'll get it all back, plus the interest. You see, that's what the loan was for. I needed a refit to pull in the punters. Fraker looked around the place admiringly. See? Mitch added hopefully, hanging on Fraker's every move. And that's money well spent too. The place looks great, Fraker said. Although Mitch was the wrong side of 50 and had been in the pub game all his adult life, he had been quick to see the potential in the whole Park Cafe, bar thing. Unfortunately for him, the banks hadn't shared his vision, so he had to turn to Mr. Lean's loans department for financial support. No problem pulling people in? Charlie ad-libbed. Mitch jumped slightly as though he had forgotten Charlie was there. He shook his head like an idiot. No, not at all. The place is heaving after the pub's close, he said. Nice one, Charlie said and moved along the bar so he was directly behind Mitch, which meant he had to crane his neck around so see him. Mitch didn't like that at all. Yep. Mitch's head snapped back to face Fraker as he spoke. It's the dog's biscuits, huh, Charlie? Oh yeah, Charlie said. Even I drink here. Raising his eyebrows, Fraker looked at Mitch, impressed. Now that is praise indeed. You know how fuzzy he can be. He gestured to Charlie. Take that suit. Guess how much it cost? Don't know, Mitch shrugged. Looks expensive. He absently dabbed his nose as he spoke, which made him wince, but at least it had finally stopped bleeding. 1,000 English pounds, Fraker declared a little too loudly, making Mitch flinch. 1,000 quid for a freaking suit. Pardon my French. Flash git. Fraker ran his fingers down his own suit's lapels. This cost me 100 tops. Never pay more than a ton for a suit, Mitchell, and you won't go far wrong, my friends. Mitch nodded, clearly wanting them gone so he could throw up. At this, Charlie gave a sigh of genuine disgust and hissed through his teeth. Philistine. Fraker ignored this as he was absently looking around the bar, again admiring the new fixtures and fittings. Then, after a long, very uncomfortable silence, which was timed to perfection, Charlie gave a little cough, which prompted Fraker back to the business at hand. What? Fraker said, seemingly a little disorientated. Oh, yeah. Sorry, Mitch. I was miles away there. Right then, so I can give Mr. Lim my personal guarantee you'll pay the money back? Oh, Christ, yeah, every penny, plus the interest. Mitch nodded vigorously, which seemed to make his head spin judging by the way his eyes rolled. Right then, on my head be it, and all that as they say. Seemingly satisfied, Fraker then made a move to stand, which earned an almost audible sigh of relief from Mitch. But then he stopped, mid-movement, as if he'd just remembered something and then sat right back down again. Oh yeah, while we're here, Charlie. Fraker held out his hand to Charlie, who reached behind him and pulled out the pistol from the back of his trousers. He took a step towards Fraker and handed him the weapon. Fraker then expertly popped out the ammunition clip and pushed out a bullet with his thumb. As he was doing this, Charlie couldn't help but glance at Mitch, who, seeing the gun, had gone quite remarkably pale, and watched Fraker slack-jawed as he slammed the clip back into the pistol and handed it back to Charlie. Whoa, hang on, Bill, Mitch babbled in disbelief, but Fraker didn't look up straight away. He just turned the bullet over in his hand for a few seconds, letting Mitch stew a little longer. Then finally held it between his thumb and forefinger and raised it up for him to see. Showtime. They called it the kneecap routine. Fraker squinted at the bullet and moved it slightly so the light glinted off its metal casing. Look at this, Mitch, Fraker eventually said. This is a 9mm Parabellum, jacketed hollow point round. It's the type the IRA used to use in the good old days if they were gonna kneecap someone. As Fraker spoke, Charlie moved back directly behind Mitch and said, You see, Mitch. Mitch jumped a mile and once again had to crane his neck around to see him as he spoke. It's not big enough to cause any permanent damage, but it is big enough for you to know about it if you did get shot with one. Fraker's turn. Now the IRA always used to shoot you through the front of the knee, usually as a warning. It would hurt like bloody hell, but you could walk again in 6 to 8 weeks? It's not meant to cripple you, Charlie continued. It's just sort of step up from a slap on the wrist, so to speak. Albeit a heck of a lot more painful. Bill? Absolutely. Now me and Charlie, here we're talking about this. And we figured, if we were gonna kneecap someone... Mitch was now sweating profusely. He screwed his eyes tight shut, perhaps hoping when he opened them, this would all be just a bad dream. We'd shoot them through the back of the knee, Charlie said gleefully. Feeling nauseous, Mitch opened his eyes again. Nope, they were still both there. He looked at Fraker, who leaned forward a little. Yeah, so the bullet would exit through the front of the knee. He gently tapped Mitch's kneecap. About here. Charlie began pacing around enthused. Mitch was looking about fit to pass out now. He opened his mouth, but nothing came out. Yeah, and we'd use one of those soft-nosed bullets, or a dum-dum. The light caught the bullet again as Fraker rolled it between his thumb and the forefinger. So, Fraker continued, when it hits the patella, it would shatter into dozens of minute metal splinters, which would each in turn tear through the flesh, bone, and cartilage of the kneecap before exiting in a dozen different places. Charlie showed his hands in his pocket and sat casually on the edge of a table just behind Fraker's right shoulder. We figured it would actually take off your entire knee, not to mention what it would do to your trousers. He smiled and nodded to himself, as if picturing this in his mind's eye. Uh-huh. Fraker nodded, also then added ruefully, and with the NHS being what it is these days, you'd never walk again. Both Charlie and Fraker stared off into space, lost in the moment. The room would have been pin-drop quiet, were it not for Mitch's ragged breathing. Then, after a suitably long pause, Fraker snapped out of it and looked at the poor bar owner sit opposite him. Even Fraker was surprised at his deathly pallor. Oof, sorry, mate, he said. I was miles away there. Don't even know why I brought it up. It's just an idea me and Charlie have been playing around with. Yeah, we don't get out much, Charlie added. Fraker leaned forward again and placed the bullet carefully into Mitch's sweaty palm. Here, this is for you. Call it a souvenir. Right then, Charlie said, buttoning up his expensive coat right to the top. That's us. Good night, Mitch. And with that, he walked over to the door and with a casual cheers over his shoulder, he disappeared outside. Satisfied at a job well done and with a minimum of violence, Fraker also got to his feet. Nobody got shot, and he had no doubts that poor Mitch would pay on time from now on. It was just like he told Charlie. It was all about controlling the situation, stamping your authority on it before anything bad can develop, and this had been a textbook example tonight. He buttoned up his jacket and looked down at Mitch, who was still staring at the bullet in his trembling hands, and felt a tinge of remorse which came out of nowhere. Fraker had been using the kneecap routine for years now. He had recited it so many times with Charlie and others that its thread of underlying violence was lost on him now. It was just that, a routine. Everyone knew it in this line of work and had their own version of it. People added their own little flourishes here and there, like any good joke. Learn it, then make it your own. He patted Mitch on the shoulder, then sat a little softer than he had meant. See you later, mate, and walked away. Although he was sure Mitch hadn't heard him, let alone picked up on the tone of his voice. Fraker silently cursed himself for getting soft and stepped out into the cold night air. It had started to snow since they had been inside, and the ground was covered with a light dusting. Charlie was waiting by the car, stamping his feet to keep warm. That's it, Fraker thought, digging into his pocket for the keys. Get feed the first chance I get, and stop thinking so much. It's all just part of the job. As he got to the car, Charlie beamed at him. I thought that went well, he said. Yeah, your delivery's getting better. Yeah? Nice one. They got into the car, and as Fraker pulled away, he remembered the hip flask in the glove compartments. He brightened up somewhat. He would demolish it once he dropped Charlie off. For some reason, the kid didn't drink, which made him a freak in Fraker's eyes. Life without alcohol, Fraker thought. Jesus, he couldn't think of a worse kind of hell.